This is why I think Neuralink is important, because it's being designed to remove the bottleneck of the absorption of information. Like you have to sit there now and or Neuralink will just let you just choose a document and learn it.
Test the claim.
I want to preface this by stating for the record that you are a neuropsychologist, and therefore any slip-ups in the upcoming dialogue are going to be seized upon with maximum prejudice. No,
Great.
no. You refresh your memory. But do you remember anything about it off the top of your head?
I've got the article.
Right.
Um,
You're not going to read it to me.
very small on my phone.
Look. Just pinch out, man. Pinch out. Zoom in.
I'm going to download the article, download the PDF. There we go.
This is why I think Neuralink is important, because it's being designed to remove the bottleneck of the absorption of information. Like you have to sit there now and or Neuralink will just let you just choose a document and learn it. Like Neo learning Kung Fu in the Matrix. On the Nebuchadnezzar, the ship.
Yeah.
Its ship Nebuchadnezzar.
I question how
that would work.
Yeah, like realistically.
Well, let's start with that then.
Okay.
Because that's in your field.
I suppose.
The acquisition of information or absorption of information. How, if someone like Elon Musk describes utility for technology like Neuralink as removing the bottleneck for the absorption of information, i.e. making any information, let's say, available on the internet, instantly available to your mind,
Right.
without the need to read the document or watch the video to understand the content.
Mm-hmm.
But you say you're skeptical about the practicality of making that.
I'm skeptical of how, because I haven't necessarily seen the science behind it. Obviously, when Elon Musk speaks on such things, and there are reports given on such things, it's from the perspective of someone who's marketing that campaign and not necessarily the scientific facts, and they're usually quite different. So like, usually there's a marketing team who would interpret the papers maybe, and then maybe write something.
Some bullet points.
Yeah, and then give it to Elon Musk to talk about, or some sort of.
Go talk about this.
Yeah. So whether or not he actually knows what he's talking about, or whether he's just.
Okay, so
Hence why I'm skeptical.
Right. So from a neuropsychologist's perspective, what obstacles would you feel would be the most prominent, simply at the point of engaging with that problem? Like if you were charged with developing a technology that would allow you to remove the bottleneck, as Elon Musk puts it, inherent in absorbing information, what would be the obvious obstacles there?
Okay. Before neuroscience, psychologically, again, I'm like saying it without having looked at the science behind it, like any papers that have been published regarding the development of these kind of technologies. So it's quite limited on my understanding of
obviously
that.
And a very cursory.
Yeah. I mean,
approach.
immediately issues regarding capacity, because
Capacity in terms of storage.
capacity to learn
Uh,
complicated or keep that much information readily available. Because obviously, if say someone has a particular IQ level, whether that technology is going to increase the IQ level, the IQ level is going to limit their ability to understand information that's available to them, regardless of whether they have access to it. Like theoretically,
can you keep explaining this? I actually need to take this phone call.
okay, sure. Do we need to wait? Okay.
Just keep talking as if I'm listening.
Yeah. I can't do that. That's weird.
Sorry, Jôvan.
Fine.
Did you stop?
I did actually stop. I was like, I don't know what
All right.
I was saying.
I'll for the first time ever in the history of this channel, I will cut a bit out,
Sure.
so that no one has to sit there. I mean, you're a handsome man, so maybe people will just enjoy watching you sitting there. Let's assume there was a splice. So capacity.
Yeah, capacity, intellectual capacity.
Yeah. People, those with a low IQ, you said, right? Something to do with the.
Yeah. Where it might be helpful is learning new skills.
Right.
Particularly training.
Right.
Um,
Kung Fu.
yes. Yeah.
As
give an
good a
example.
skill as any.
Well, I'm thinking more like first aid or
Sure,
like
sure.
something.
Yeah. Let's get our priorities straight.
Like learning new skills quite immediately. I imagine that would be very, very helpful.
Yeah.
Actually doing things, getting things done.
The thing is, wouldn't one suspect that this type of technology would probably get weaponized first? So, for example, you could teach people things that would make them more useful in a military theater.
Yeah.
Espionage, and so on. But yeah, let's look at more sort of everyday practical applications.
Yeah, I think it might be useful for learning new skills.
Right.
But also, I wonder the extent to which, assuming, because that kind of technology takes a while for it to become publicly available at a mass level, but assuming it eventually does, questions as to whether that technology would be used responsibly, because it would be very easy for people to access content that's otherwise very, very inappropriate, and they wouldn't. That's
Whatever could you mean? The thing is, I suspect that the elites would get access to this type of technology first,
typically, yes.
and subsequently, given the potential and maybe the potential for reinforcing the power of the elites, it's probably highly likely that it would never reach the mass public. It would never become a ubiquitous technology, or it may just be disseminated in a very limited capacity.
Yeah, I agree. However, also a downside to that kind of system, as recent events have demonstrated, when you have access to that kind of limited technology, because the technology is quite new, often it's buggy, prototypes, limited testing. One of the advantages you get from having it available to the masses is that you get mass feedback.
Sure.
And wide testing, and you can see from a more general populational level how the technology works and what could be improved. But if the elites get first access to something, essentially because most of the elites aren't neuroscientists, so there's not really, although they have first access to it because of resources, they don't. There's not really much they can do if it doesn't work very well. So often the downside to that is that the technology that they get is very, because that's quite dangerous. Like to have a buggy chip in your brain, consequences of that can be quite dangerous. Like obviously the recent events with the submarine thing kind of demonstrates that. I think it's like
I was waiting for someone to bring up the submarine today.
yeah, it's quite irrelevant to the point I'm making. It's just like when you're in elite and you have access to kind of resources that nobody else does, testing of those resources
Right.
usually not done very well.
Right.
So it's a very large risk.
Accidents can happen.
Accidents. I think it's dangerous technology. So I don't know. Not that I want to hear about elites dying or elites getting weird chips in their brain and seeing what would happen, because I don't think that's an appropriate way to view it. But it's a danger, you know. So in many ways,
I fear that when this technology gets combined with AI, and let's say AI develops to such an extent that it becomes self-aware, while having access to the innermost parts of the workings of our brains, the potential, let's say, okay, call it sci-fi, but the potential for our brains to be colonized and for us to be turned into some sort of worker bee drones operating on behalf of Skynet, as it was in the Terminator anthology.
I get what you mean. Yeah, personally, combining that kind of technology with AI and sticking it in someone's brain seems just a bit irresponsible, personally. Just because AI systems are usually also buggy.
Yeah, but also if you think about where we're talking about Neuralink specifically, the transmission or absorption of information, if that information is being manipulated by artificial intelligence, but this artificial intelligence is somehow able to bypass any kind of safeguards where you could switch it off or disconnect from it, it could effectively reshape one's sense of reality. If information is being force-fed to the human brain, altering your understanding of what it is, of what reality is, that's what information does. It alters your understanding of whatever the topic is that information covers.
Yeah, I get it.
Now imagine that our brains are the goose liver of that particular force-feeding process, as in our brains become the foie gras, so to speak. The delicacy of the AI palette.
Also, I'm not entirely sure of the place in the brain that this Neuralink chip would be placed.
Right.
That's also quite technical. What you're saying, there are a lot of dangers to that, besides simply the issue with manipulation of information, like say
even the implanting of memories. Perhaps?
Yeah. I'm talking more on firstly on a physiological level.
Right.
Because
but where would you envisage this technology even begins in terms of structurally in the brain?
That's something I'd need to look at the papers for,
Right.
Because if it depends on where it is, because obviously different parts of the brain do different things.
Right. I mean, you have to even understand conceptually their approach to the problem, right?
Yeah. So I do, because I'm assuming if it's a matter of information, then it's a matter of putting it in it's a matter of where within the cortex and not necessarily the limbic system.
Right.
Because obviously the limbic system of the brain is usually where motivation and emotions, that kind of stuff are processed.
Okay.
But that kind of calculation of information in order to make decisions, or that kind of IQ kind of information retainment, stuff like that. That's more this level of the brain. So I'm assuming it's placed here, but where it's placed actually creates different problems, because if it's really deep in the brain, like the brainstem, then that's a big problem in terms of potential issues. So I need to look somewhat at the details, because I haven't looked at it too much, but with my limited knowledge
Yeah.
on that,
Sorry, I just need to send a text, unfortunately.
my limited knowledge on that, it's like it's fascinating. Like from a neuroscientist perspective, I'm very fascinated to see what it does. Like just from a research / academic perspective.
Yeah. All right. Well, that's your homework.
That's my homework. Yeah. But from a practical level, I don't know what trying to be achieved. In terms of learning new skills, it's very useful.
Yeah.
In terms of like access to like vast information, I feel like I'm assuming the idea is limitless potential in terms of like informational access. But from my understanding of just how people work, there's already more. Like people these days usually have more access to information than any other human part in human history.
Yeah.
And to say that that's made much of a difference in terms of human wisdom and decision making. It depends on where you sit. If you have access to that kind of technology and you're taught to use it responsibly, then I suppose.
I think invariably people are going to probably use this type of technology to gain wealth and to gain power.
Yeah.
Unfortunately.
So when the technology becomes available, it would be firstly it would be a business venture, because people who develop the technology would want to make the money back from it.
Meaning the flow of information will invariably be interrupted by commercials.
Yeah, they're gonna sell it to someone. Someone's gonna get it.
We're having a conversation about Neuralink. It's the sorry. It's technology that Elon Musk, one of Elon Musk's companies, is trying to develop to remove the bottleneck in the absorption of information from the internet. So whereas we are currently limited by, let's say, how quickly we can read, or how long it takes to watch a video or listen to a podcast, what he's proposing is that the technology will allow you to absorb that information instantaneously. You'll have instant access to any information that exists in the collective library that is the internet.
Why would you want to do that?
I imagine there will be different motivations for different people, but I assume most people will be interested in how they can better their personal circumstances with it. So if that makes them
individuals want to do it. I guess my point is, like Elon Musk, he often talks about things that you could translate into like making a better world.
come and sit here. I'll ask questions from behind the camera.